All right, welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. And today we got another special guest to help me with this one, none other than Mr. Chris Kiebzak. Welcome.
Hey, well, how's it going, guys?
All right, so we got
Yeah.
this catalog ranking today is none other than Iron Maiden. And I'll tell you, obviously, it's been a while since our last ranking because it took a while to compile this list.
For sure. For
17
sure.
albums in all. That was a big one. And
It
there's
was
so much
it
to
was
listen to.
definitely harder than Kiss, I think. For sure.
Even though Kiss has more.
Yeah, they do, but it didn't feel like it when you're doing this with Maiden though. Because
No, it's
Maiden has so many their discography is it's so consistent for the most part, but we'll get into
well,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and every album pretty much is, ever since the CD age, pretty much over 100 minutes. I mean, it's just really long albums,
Oh
long
yeah.
songs, and you get your money's worth with Iron Maiden for sure. All
Yeah.
right, so we're gonna real quick talk about the catalog. Obviously, there's like distinct eras of the band. You got the Paul Di'Anno era, which was the first lead vocalist that started things off with the first Iron Maiden album, and he stayed aboard until the Killers album was complete. Then enters Bruce Dickinson, and obviously he stayed aboard all the way up until Fear of the Dark in 1992. Um, he left the band and was replaced by Blaze Bailey. So then you got the Blaze Bailey era for two albums. He stayed aboard till about 99, and that's when Bruce came back. They recorded Brave New World, and he's been back ever since. So great catalog, got a lot of great stuff to talk about and rank here. So we're gonna just dig right into it.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and let's go. What do you got for number 17?
All right. So 17. So it's interesting, like you said, with how big the catalog is, and ranking these records, a lot of things did not fall where I thought they were going to for me with this. So which is interesting. Had to do a couple different variations of the list to really feel like I had it put down right. Now I figured that one of the two albums with Blaze was gonna start me off here at number 17, and it did with X Factor. X Factor is an album that as a kid I thought now in my 30s that I enjoyed that record a lot more than I apparently do. Um I love Blaze's voice. There's something stagnant and safe with this record, I think. This is obviously the time period where the band's sort of going into a little different direction musically. And that actually sort of, I feel, is what made the when Bruce came back for the reunion more um I feel it pushed that style of music that we got with the last six or seven records, more so than anything before the Blaze era. So I guess that's a good thing because I do enjoy the style change and the change of pace. Couple decent songs on here. Um, Sign of the Cross, obviously they play that one live from time to time. I do like that song. Man on the Edge, I think is a really good banger. Obviously, the problem with Sign of the Cross at its time, over 11 minutes. And then just a couple that really doesn't do much for me, like 2 a.m. or The Unbeliever was the last two songs on the record. Um, yeah, it just sort of feels like it drags on a little bit, but I do like Blaze. It is nice with the three singers to be able to switch over to the Blaze era and hear his voice and the different dynamics that come with that. But all that being said, X Factor definitely at the bottom of the barrel here as far as a 17 album catalog from a band like Maiden.
All right, and my number 17 is not that album, but it's another one that
Uh-huh.
Blaze sings on, and that
Gotcha.
would be Virtual 11 that came out in 1995. It reached number 16 in the UK, number 124 in the US, produced by Steve Harris and Nigel Green. And it's the weakest album out of the whole band's catalog. The only song that I really even find to enjoy a little bit is "The Klansman," which is a song that they still play here and there now, every now and then, with Bruce singing on it. I don't know. I just couldn't get into the vocals, unfortunately. Blaze. He's not a bad singer, but I think when you're so used to Bruce Dickinson, anything less is just it just doesn't do anything, you know? I mean, maybe you
Totally.
can get somebody like a known vocalist that's a voice that you're accustomed to. But I'm trying to think who actually has a voice like Bruce Dickinson. Think about that. Not really anybody, you know?
I guess
Oh,
the most you could compare him to is like Halford probably, but even that is a
yeah,
different. It's close enough, but it's
right.
not Dickinson. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I mean that's the problem with these songs. Had Bruce actually sang on the album, I probably would like more because with his phrasing and his technique, I think obviously a lot of those songs were written by Steve Harris. So,
Yeah, I do
um,
prefer the songs live than on record when Bruce does them. Like if you heard the last couple live releases,
mhm,
those songs are on there and they're great. He sounds great singing.
yeah. So that's what we got for me, number 17.
All right. Number 16 for me is going to be 2003's Dance of Death. Um, didn't really dig it when it came out. Really glad the album that came after it is the one that did. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But not a huge fan. Liked the single Passchendaele, that I thought was decent enough for the time. But honestly, if it wasn't for me seeing them 2 years later, I may have fallen off with Maiden for a little bit because the first time I seen them was '05. At Ozfest and changed my life as far as Maiden's concerned. But yeah, this album didn't do much for me. It was between this and X Factor for the final two, and yeah, just it does have it sounded a little bit better to my ears than I remember it being when I re-listened to it for this, but yeah, Dance of Death just feels a little contrived and sort of again a little stale for my ears. So yeah, my number 16, Dance of Death.
All right, my number 16 is going to be the counterpart here to the Virtual 11. That's going to be the X Factor. So 95 was the X Factor, and that reached number 8 on the UK and 147 in the US. And out of all the US albums that charted for Maiden, this one was the worst ranking at 147. This album was also produced by Steve Harris and Nigel Green, and pretty much the same thing as far as with the Virtual 11. There, you got the songs that stick out for me are "Blood on the World's Hands." That one definitely stood out for me, and I know you mentioned that you didn't like this one, but I thought it was actually better than the rest of the stuff that I listened to. That was 2 a.m. Um, but other than that, the rest of them, even the Sign of the Cross wasn't a strong version. I mean, I've heard and seen Bruce sing it, so I know what the song can be like. But unfortunately, the studio version with Mr. Blaze Bailey here just doesn't cut it for me.
Got it.
So that's number 16 there, X Factor.
Yeah, cool. You got one whole singer away with your first two, huh? Yeah, so my number 15, another one that we just spoke about a decent amount here is Virtual 11. Um, Definitely obviously like it better than Dance of Death, and I like it a lot better than X Factor as well. I think Future Real and Lightning Strikes Twice and The Klansman are three of honestly, some of my favorite Maiden, definitely from non-Bruce era. Probably my three favorite Blaze songs or non-Bruce songs would be those three: Future Real, Klansman, and Lightning Strikes Twice. I wish Lightning Strikes Twice would be one of those songs played live instead of the same two that Maiden seem to do now. But yeah, in 1998, I remember. And this probably has a lot to do with why I like this album more than a lot of people is the video game that coincided with this, Ed Hunter, in 1998 for the PC is what came out. And my family just got a PC in 1998 for our very first time. We got a computer as when I was a kid, and I got that for birthday or Christmas or something. And it was a really nice companion piece for the record. A lot of cool stuff. If people who are watching this haven't played that game, at least go on YouTube and watch the walkthrough. It's very interesting for the time period to have as much Bruce reference and early album references in there when they were trying to sell the whole Blaze thing. So, Virtual 11, I think, is sort of an underrated album in their catalog, but it still has to sit down in that final three for me with how strong the rest of the catalog is, as we'll get into.
Okay. Number 15 for me is going to be the Book of Souls, which came out in 2015. It was another number one for them in UK. It did reach number four here, and it was produced by the same guy who produced much of the later catalog of Maiden, none other than Kevin Shirley. Um, Book of Souls, it's just typical Maiden. It came with a nice deluxe set there. Packaging was awesome. Definitely gets thumbs up for the packaging. Um, I think the songs that really stood out on this one for me were the first two. The album started off in pretty good style with the first two tracks on there, which would be the If Eternity Should Fail and Speed of Light. Those that really set the tone for the album. But then it just felt like, I don't know. I felt like it lost a little bit until I got to the title track, The Book of Souls. That's another song that I felt was really good. It started picking the album back up, but I don't know. For some reason, I listened to this album quite a bit here, and I just really couldn't find much to sink my teeth into. Unlike some of the other albums, the later catalog. Obviously, I'd lie to you. I'd be lying if I said that. You know, I really love this second half of the Maiden catalog. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's decent, but and as you will see, some of them will score higher than others. But this one for me is just not as good as the other ones. It's the plain way to look at it. So that's what I got at number 15, Book of Souls.
Cool. Well, we are getting close, aren't we? Number 14 for me is Book of Souls. And yeah, I mean, you pretty much said the bulk of the issues with this record. At 92 minutes and two discs, I mean, is it really that necessary to have a record that long? 92 minutes? I mean, especially nowadays. I mean, the attention span of people. 92 minutes. There are some decent songs. Like you said, The Book of Souls is a good song. Speed of Light, I think, is a good song. There's a couple songs. What's interesting is the long songs are very long, and the shorter songs are still too long. So, like, I mean, you're talking about the Red and the Black, which honestly is a good song. I think the name is weird because of the Blue Oyster Cult song.
Mm.
But I mean, 13 minutes. I mean, some people's records are only 35 minutes. A lot of the bands I listen to records are only 35 minutes. And it's insane. I mean, when you look at the lengths here, I mean, let's look at lengths over 8 minutes. Red and Black, 13 and a half. When the River Runs Deep is at 10 and a half. And The Man of Sorrows is 6 and a half, still feels like it's a 24-hour song. And then Empire of the Clouds, which has some amazing riffs and dynamics in there, is an 18-minute song. So the biggest problem, which I feel a lot with the last 15 years of Maiden records, is just too long. It's hard to enjoy even the great songs when you're listening to an album that long and you're into hour one and it's 60 minutes and you still have 30 minutes of songs to listen to. It's hard to really let them engulf you. So that's my problem with Book of Souls. And I was very close to putting Book of Souls last, but I
Wow.
I do love the prog element of Maiden, and there are some moments that just click in my head when I re-listen to it, and I knew I had to move it up a little bit. But yeah, at 92 minutes, Book of Souls needs to be condensed a little bit.
All
But yeah,
right.
that's where I'm at for number 14.
All right. So my number 14 is going to be the last Iron Maiden album that's seen the light of day here.
Oh,
Senjutsu
that's
came
an
out
interesting.
2021. Yeah, I feel pretty much similar to that Book of Souls thing. It's too long, 81 minutes. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you
long.
talk about 92, so they did you a favor. They chopped off 11 minutes for you on this one.
Yeah, and honestly, we'll talk about that, but it helped a little.
yeah, it helped me too because this one's ranked a little bit better.
Yeah.
So this album obviously broke their string. They had a couple number ones in a row in the UK, and then this one only reached number two, sadly. And here they reached number three, which is phenomenal. In the US for them. This one came out smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. Another one produced by Kevin Shirley once again. Um, This one here, I remember when I first started playing this one, and I said, Maiden is back. I heard the title track. I go, yes. And then I started listening to some of this other stuff. I love Days of Future Past. I love The Time Machine, Darkest Hour. And then, the album kind of ends on a so-so note for me. I was thinking there was going to be more stuff between Senjutsu and Days of Future Past. I mean, those songs, I tried listening to them. They do have some good, cool riffs in them, and the lyrics are cool. But for some reason, those songs just didn't really come home all the way for me for whatever reason. Um, but that's what it is right now. That's what I got here for my number 14, Senjutsu.
Cool. All right. So number 13 for me, it's the album before the last one that we talked about in length, Books of Souls, and it's Final Frontier. So it's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting that it comes right before in my list of Book of Souls when it was the album to come out right before. But yeah, I thought this one was a little bit better. Now it's still, to my knowledge, their third longest record at 76 minutes. But the song still, there's only one song over 9 minutes, and it's not actually two if you count the Talisman, which is a 9:03. But at 76 minutes, it's not too bad. Now, I thought El Dorado was one of the best singles they released since the reunion with Brave New World. El Dorado, great song. 6.5 minutes, still long, but with how fast and old school it sounds with the galloping bass, and it's got that old school first five record feel. 7 minute song with that kind of feel works. I thought El Dorado was an incredible song. And then one of my top five Maiden songs sits on this record, When the Wild Wind Blows. Another long, it's by far the longest song that I love out of any band. It's 11 minutes, it's 1 second less than that, it's 10:59. And thank God for the live DVD they released that year to back up this album because that's what sold me on this song. Uh, one of the best Maiden songs in their catalog, very long, but I would love to see it live. Definitely helped put this album up a little bit, but at 76 minutes, still drags a little bit, still a lot of filler. But El Dorado, and Wild Wind Blows, amazing tracks. Definitely a sleeper album. Definitely, if you guys haven't listened to that song in a while, or that record in a while, I recommend maybe revisiting it because it definitely shined a little more than I thought it was going to. And that's why it sits at number 13 out of 17 for me.
All right. So my number 13 might surprise some people here, but that's where it fell, and that's where I'm gonna keep it. That's where it belongs. Number 13, 1981, Killers, the
Whoa.
final album with Diano.
Yeah, surprised me.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, looking at when it's above it, I know I just feel the other ones are stronger. That's all a little bit.
That's the beauty of doing
Killers,
these things. Yep.
yep. Killers, number 12, it reached in the UK. Number 78 in the US. So that's kind of the first album where that's the first charting album here in the US. It was also the first album with guitarist Adrian Smith. It's certified gold and of course produced by the older producer of Maiden, who's produced pretty much the first so many albums there, Martin Birch. Um, so Killers, obviously, the highlight of the album to me, without a doubt, is Wrathchild. It doesn't matter who sings it, great song, any way, shape, or form. And I think Bruce obviously on Live After Death, Wrathchild is on there, and Bruce does a lot of the songs from the first two albums, and I think it's a little bit they play it a little bit faster on the live version, and it's a little bit more potent with Bruce singing it. But I think Diano did a great job on the studio version. Murders in the Rue Morgue, another one that stands out for me. Drifter. But other than that, the rest of the album to me is just kind of blasé. I don't know. I just really found myself. I'm going. I always thought there was more stuff on this album that I really would like or liked. And I'm going, this is weird. But I guess the majority of the stuff for me actually falls on the first Iron Maiden album with Paul. So that's why this one's a lot weaker. It just doesn't have as many good songs on here, in my estimation. And that's why I got it at number 13.
Cool. All right. So my number 12 is the last Adrian Smith album before he came back, and that is No Prayer for the Dying. Um, Decent record, released in 1990. So this was obviously right before, things are going to go belly up for Bruce too. But yeah, there's some obviously Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter was a song I always loved. It still stayed in one of my favorites. I mean, obviously the only one to really do much besides Holy Smoke was also a single. Holy Smoke came out first actually by a few months. Holy Smoke's a great song too. Yeah, obviously Adrian left in the pre-production phase of this record because he didn't like where the style was going, which I never really understood because the style is still sort of Maiden, especially for that time period and the albums that it was sandwiched between. But there's some great songs. Hooks and You is a great song, which actually is the only song on the record that Adrian had a hand in writing. And that Tail Gunner is a great way to kick off an album. Love that song. Public Enema #1 is a really cool jam. And this record may be one of the last where the songs were as short as they are. I mean, we're looking at 4 minutes, 3 minutes, four. Everything is under 6 minutes, and the longest song on the record is 5:30. So, listening to this was a lot easier listen than I expected. So I thought it was going to fall a little lower in my list in like the bottom five or the bottom four rather, but it didn't. It didn't. It actually at number 12, I think that's a pretty decent place for it. I love how cohesive it is and how it flows because of how short it is. So yeah, that's why No Prayer for the Dying, number 12.
All right. Very good. Number 12 for me is none other than the 2010 release, The Final Frontier. Another number one there in the UK, and number four here, produced by none other than Kevin Shirley. So The Final Frontier, um, that was the, let's see, so that this, obviously we got the Bruce coming back into the band with Brave New World. So this would be the fourth album with him on
Right.
his comeback, and the third last album that's been released from Maiden. Um, the third most recent release, I should say. And as far as the Final Frontier goes, another album that I would say there's a good handful of tracks that I like on here, and I'll tell you which ones those are. Give you a little bit of a rundown on what I like off of this album, and that's I think the album kicks off in like you mentioned, El Dorado. I really love El Dorado. That one is the first song that really kicks it into gear for me. Coming Home, and obviously The Talisman,
Yep.
When the Wind Blows. Yeah, that's just those are some of the stronger material on that album. And it seems like the ones I didn't mention, they just seem to be just a little weaker there. Obviously, that should be When the Wild Wind Blows.
Yeah.
The last song on the album,
Yeah.
written by Steve Harris. There's a lot to like here and a lot to gather around. Like you said, it's 76 minutes. Was it like the third longest album they've
Yeah.
released as
Yeah,
far
that's
as
correct.
time goes?
Yep.
So, you know, I think it's, obviously it's the third last release to date right now, and it's ranked pretty significantly higher than the other two for me
Yeah.
here at number 12. But did I expect better? Kind of, because the ones that are above it that came out before it, I thought for sure we were going to get something more in the vein of that, but those other ones that came out before it are just a little bit better. And Kevin Shirley, I think, in my estimation, and I'm just throwing this out there, I think they really need to get a new producer. I feel
Yeah.
that I feel that Shirley has served his purpose. He's made some good albums,
Yeah.
but Maiden hasn't made a great album in my estimation since Brave New World, in my estimation. I really feel that's
Yeah.
the last great Maiden album. So we got a ways to go here to try to get these guys back on track. I'm hoping, we get another one soon. Um, but I think it's time to cut the ties with Kevin Shirley and let's just get somebody else in here and see what we can come up with. Like I said, he didn't make any bad albums, but the albums all seem to be kind of similar. There hasn't been no growth other than other than the time getting longer on a couple of them. But I think they need to go make a solid 8 to 9 song album that will be coming in around maybe an hour. Let's keep it around an hour
Yeah.
and to see what we come up with. I really feel that these guys still have good albums left in them, as you can see. I mean, like I said, these albums are good, but I want to see great. I want to see these guys go back to the way the early albums are, where you just play it from front to beginning without skipping tracks. And
Yeah.
though I'll
Well,
tell you one
well,
thing though.
we have to get over, they have to get over, and maybe it's Shirley, maybe it's Harris, maybe it's Dickinson, but we have to get over the quantity over quality here.
Yeah.
Like you're doing two, almost 2 hour albums. There's no way to have quality when you have that much. That's like a 4 hour movie better be pretty damn good to justify it being a 4 hour movie. Better be
Right.
the Titanic.
It's got to keep your
Yeah.
attention that time. And I mean,
Yeah.
you could build in a bathroom break here and there, and I think
Well,
that's what.
especially if they're gonna do, which I wish every other band I love does. This is the best part about Maiden, especially if they're gonna continue these cycles of tours where they're playing 80% of the new record.
Hmm.
Come on. It's you got a 2 hour record, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Cut it down a little bit. And that way, and like you said, 8, 9 songs, 7 songs. And if you do that, your songs could be 7, 8 minutes, and it can still be a really good cohesive record.
exactly.
Yeah, I
All
agree.
right, so that's number 12.
All right. Now, having said all of that, then, my number 11 is Senjutsu.
Hmm.
So out of the reason this is so high is out of the Shirley records, I feel this one is the best. With the last 6, 7 records in Maiden's catalog, the cohesiveness has been an issue. If we're going to get these same produced records at this kind of length,
Hmm.
I think the best thing to do is to make it as melodic and Maiden-like as possible. And I feel like this album, at least 4 or 5 of the songs, um, achieved that. Um, I went in with low expectations. The bar none, the best song on the album to me is the last song, Hell on Earth. It's another crazy long record at like 82 minutes between both discs. Each disc is 40 plus minutes, 40 to 41 minutes. I think Senjutsu and Stratego and Writing on the Wall are is the best 3 song pairing on a record since probably either Fear of the Dark or Brave New World. So those 3 songs were great. I'm glad they all came out when they did and built the whole lore of this record and what it's about with the culture and everything. And but yeah, a couple ones that drag a little like Death of the Celts and even Darkest Hour. That whole second disc is pretty weak besides when Hell on Earth comes in. Even at 11 minutes, I mean, this is in my top 10 Maiden songs easily. I love what Bruce does with I think he's handling his voice issues pretty well um, on record by not pushing himself to do stuff that isn't feasible. So I think this is the first record where I feel he's not pushing himself too hard where it sounds like shit. He's pushing himself enough to make it interesting enough to work his voice around. So the lower, more whispering parts that he's doing during some of these songs, I think works really well. It adds a dynamic. It sort of changes it in these 8, 9, 10 minute songs where it's like, oh, that part's really cool. That just saved the last 4 minutes sucking. So every song has its parts on this record, and I feel it's more cohesive than the 3 or 4 that preceded it for sure. So that's why Senjutsu definitely definitely like it better than the last few. And that's why that's at my number 11.
All right, very good. All right, so my number 11, and this is going to go back to 2006. Reached number 4 on the UK charts, number 9 here in the good old US, produced by Kevin Shirley. A Matter of Life and Death. This one was a surprise to me because I mean, it's one of those albums that, when you got a big of catalog as I got here with all of my music here, um, I'll tell you, I mean, there's so many albums that you don't always get a chance to listen to. You might have got it when you first got it, you might have played it a few times, and then, especially with these album rankings we're doing, you're always listening to music, but to really get certain bands, you have to listen to the album all the way through. This is obviously one of those bands you do have to do that too.
Right.
Um, and for me, this album here, A Matter of Life and Death, is definitely a very, very solid album. Now, this is the one that came out in '06. Kicks off in great style. I really love the opening track, Different World. That's one that was just stood out. And then when it goes into These Colors Don't Run, I go, wow, this is a really good, surprising start to this album. I couldn't quite remember these songs too much, you know, but I played it a couple times through to give it a good, really good, solid listen. Seems like the album kind of tilts away a little bit for you after that, and then it gets a little bit more like Out of the Shadows. Whoa, what a great song! That's one of the best Maiden songs from the later catalog, in my estimation. And For the Greater Good of God, another one that really stood out on this album for me. Um, I mean, I think the songs on here that are really strong are really, really strong. Obviously, this one only has 10 songs on an album, which is usually the typical type Maiden album. If you look at from Brave New World on, they usually have 10 to 11 songs on it. There's definitely some filler here that if you cut it down, this would have been a really, really good album. But as it is, number 11 out of 17 albums isn't a bad ranking whatsoever. And that's where I've got it. Number 11 for A Matter of Life and Death.
Cool. Well, number 10 will be a quick one to talk about then because we're close, a matter of life and death. Feel the same exact way you do. Like I said, the first time I seen Maiden, which really created, I loved Maiden before, obviously, but seeing them was like, all right, now I'm in every single thing is Maiden. And they quickly became one of my favorite bands. And then the first album that I bought that was brand new, I went to Media Play the day it released, was this record. And yeah, I was thoroughly surprised too. I was when I sat down to start doing this in the last few weeks, I thought this album was going to end up a little lower than where it's at right, pretty much almost, smack dab in the middle. It's, number 10 of 17 for me.
Mhm.
It still holds up as just like you said, every single song is good to amazing. You know what I mean? Like there's really not much filler on this record. I mean, the melodicness of the album, my favorites on the album, I think A Different World is an incredible opening song for a record or live. These Colors Don't Run, amazing song. Out of the Shadows, which I think you mentioned, amazing.
Mhm.
For the Greater Good of God, I believe is one of the songs that they played on the Legacy of the Beast tour that we seen in Buffalo, which was great. I know they played that song one of the last 3 times I seen them. So
Mhm.
they definitely played this song on a different album cycle that was more recent and it came off amazing. So yeah, I think this album, another sleeper album that maybe Maiden fans should go back and re-listen to because really it holds up even better than I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I thought maybe it was going to be like like No Prayer for the Dying was for me, or even the two Blaze albums. I thought they were going to end up a little higher, but they didn't. This one was opposite. I thought, okay, maybe I was just young and impressionable. Maybe the album's not that great because until you sit down and listen to the whole album, we get used to in the digital age of listening to the 4 or 5 songs you love off the album. You put them into playlists, you skip around, you try to change genres a little bit when you're working and stuff or doing things around the house. We just sort of got in that mode. But when you sit down with the Maiden album again and you listen to it front to back all the way through, it really sort of tells a story. And these albums almost place themselves for me when I think about it, because
Mm.
as soon as I listen, I'm like, oh, okay, this one's in the middle. Where does it go? So, yeah, Matter of Life and Death, I think, is probably the most cohesive and consistent record since the reunion in Brave New World. But Matter of Life and Death, right fucking there with the best of their catalog, in my opinion. There's just so much great catalog to rate above it. So it's hard to put it any higher, but that's why it sits there right at number 10 for me.
All right, so my number 10 is gonna be probably a surprise, and that's gonna be 1990. No Prayer for the Dying.
That is a surprise. I mean, yeah, I figured obviously it was up there higher than mine, but yeah, it is sort of a shocker.
So number 10 here, reached number 2 in the UK, number 17 in the US. It's the last certified US album at gold, and was produced by Martin Birch, and got to see this tour. They actually came to Rochester for it, so luckily I was able to see it. Um, let's see.
Who opened the tour while I have you quick, just for curiosity?
I don't remember because they played twice in Rochester, so I didn't notate that down.
Right.
I've seen so many shows with Maiden, it's really harder
Yeah,
to remember because those two shows were both at the Rochester War Memorial,
right,
and that and Fear of the Dark both were there, and that was the last time I got to see Bruce on Fear of the Dark was before he left.
right.
But one of them, Anthrax, opened, and I'm not sure on who opened the other one.
Cool.
Well, I'll figure it out one of these days.
Oh yeah, whatever. No, no, all good. But yeah,
All right, so No Prayer for the Dying kicks off in fine style with Tail Gunner, one of the very underrated songs of the band's catalog. You know, a lot of people don't really like No Prayer for the Dying. They felt that's where Maiden really started where the wheels started coming off per se, following Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Um, this is where everybody feels that the wheels kind of came off because then Bruce left and did his solo album, and then he came back and did Fear of the Dark. So No Prayer for the Dying, deep the tracks. That one, Holy Smoke, was one of the first songs they played off of it on the radio. Holy Smoke doesn't really hold up as good as it did back in the day. I was really kind of surprised. I mean, I liked the song, but it just felt a little weak. And of course, it didn't really come back to life until the album itself, until it gets to Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, which is a I don't know, how did that song become such a live fan favorite? I mean,
yeah.
it's an okay song, but it seems like it just did so people love the live version of it, but I never would have thought that that would be such a big live song for them, but it
Well, they
really
don't really play it anymore though, do they? I mean, they haven't played it in a long time.
well, they used to though, and it's on a
Yeah.
couple of
Oh
those
yeah.
live app what's that a real live one or a
The
real
real
dead
yeah.
one of those, yeah. But
Yeah, during the reunion, that was a huge song during the reunion era for some reason. Yeah.
yeah.
It was on,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. The live version was on like every greatest hits album. It was
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I mean it's a good song. I just never I was wondering what the fascination was with it though, but other than that, those are the three songs to me that really stand out, and the rest of the album is kind of eh. Public Enema number one, lame lyrics, lame title. Um, Hooks and You isn't nothing really to write home about. Mother Russia. I mean, it seemed like they kind of lost their lust here, and that's where it started, where the wheels definitely started falling off. But they did quickly regain them because neither one of us have mentioned the follow up yet. So I mean, I think that was a positive sign. But then again, after that next album came out is when the wheels really did fall off and Bruce left. So, but No Prayer for the Dying, number 10.
There you go. Cool. All right. Well, my number nine is going to be the reunion record. Love Brave New World. Thought, from the album cover, the Derek Riggs album cover to my one of my favorite Maiden songs, Out of the Silent Planet, just another, decently long one of 6.5 minutes, and I'm surprised I love the way I do, but what a great song. I mean, God, I would love for them to start playing that song, but just great songs on the record. Obviously, The Wicker Man, which got a little annoying after being played every tour. But Blood Brothers, it's a good song. The Fallen Angel, I think, is a decent song. Even the Nomad, which is 9 minutes, is has some great riffs and some great dynamic parts. Um, yeah, really good album for for a reunion record. Obviously, this was sort of the start of the Kevin Shirley era. But obviously, in my opinion, the strongest of that era. The songs are just a lot more cohesive, a lot less like driving down a road to get somewhere. I mean, this album sort of puts all the puzzle pieces together and you know what you're getting into. So that's why I love Brave New World. I look at it. The only way I can look at it in a negative light is a little way is in a way is because every album that came after it sort of is compared to Brave New World because every album produced by Kevin Shirley has the same dynamic and same feel after a while. So I think that's the album that sort of started it all to being paint by numbers, but obviously in my opinion it's the strongest out of all of them. So Brave New World sits right at number 9, right around that halfway point for me.
All right. Speaking of number 9, I'm going to go back to 1992 and finish talking about the album that came after No Prayer for the Dying, and that's Fear of the Dark.
Oh,
So this Fear of the Dark is the last album to be produced by Martin Birch, who actually retired after making that album with the band. And it reached number 1 in the UK and number 12 here in the US. So it actually charted better in both countries. So, obviously it's a stronger album than No Prayer for the Dying. And and this one here kicks off in pretty cool style here as we kick it off with Be Quick or Be Dead, a fast-paced juggernaut there. And then we get into right into From Here to Eternity, which is another great song. Afraid to Shoot Strangers, Wasting Love. I mean, the title track, obviously, I know you're going to be talking about that one probably. Just a phenomenal album, considering what No Prayer for the Dying was. They definitely came back for one more solid album, before Bruce left. Just a good way to send Martin Birch off into retirement with because that guy produced a lot of great albums over his time. Uh,
sure did.
he
Yes,
he
sir.
worked with a lot of people, but his best work, in my estimation, definitely is the Maiden catalog because how in the world do you come up with those albums all in a row? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven solid albums. No Prayer for the Dying is okay. It's a good album, so I'm gonna have to keep that lumped in there. But the other ones around it are very, very excellent albums. So he did a lot of great work with this band. These guys worked well together, and Fear of the Dark is, it signified the end of that beginning of the Maiden era, obviously with Martin Birch leaving, and then obviously Bruce Dickinson. So so we had a lot going on there after this one, and that's where I got Fear of the Dark at number 9.
Cool. All right. Well, my number 8 might be a little surprising to you, but this is where it sits for me,
Mm.
and that is Somewhere Back in Time. Um, Good album. I personally think it's a little overrated, but when you're talking about what comes after it, um, and with the Shirley records in the last few albums, it's still a banger. And honestly, it held up a lot better than I thought. Especially, I mean, obviously, I re-got into the album when the Future Past tour came, and I'm still hoping to be able to catch that in some capacity because I do love this album. Would love to see the songs that they're playing live, especially from Senjutsu as well. But yeah, this album, I mean, Caught Somewhere in Time, great song. Obviously, Wasted Years, it's another one that got a little bit old to me over time. I can do without hearing that one uh anymore, period. I mean, when you think about Maiden, that's sort of up there with Run of the Hills and stuff now, where Wasted Years is sort of one of the four or five Maiden songs they play when they're talking about Maiden. So, um, another one of my absolute favorite songs in Maiden's catalog, Alexander the Great, and that's because of the constant changes in the prog environment that has these riffs that just come out of nowhere and completely blast you, and it's amazing. Deja Vu is a really underrated good song. And Stranger in a Strange Land, I know that's huge in the Maiden community, and I love that song as well. I think it's extremely underrated by the rest of the metal fans and population who aren't that zoned in on Maiden. Um, and even the poppiness, Heaven Can Wait, the poppiness that comes with that song, I really like that. I think that's a little bit different for this time period. So it's really nice to have that sort of bit of pop in there. But yeah, I mean it's another, it's a decently long album at 50 minutes, so it's under an hour, and you're talking about 12 songs. So it's not too bad. But yeah, I like the record. I'm glad they're revisiting it now. Me and you got to see the first time they revisited this tour in Cleveland in the mid 2000s, which was a pretty good tour, right? Yeah, when we went and seen them at in Cleveland, they played this. This was the album they were sort of circling around. Um, but yeah, good album. There's six studio albums, so that's where it sits right there at number 8 for me.
All right, my number 8 is none other than the 2003 release, Dance of Death. Peaked at number 2 in the UK, number 18 here. The follow-up to Brave New World, and once again Kevin Shirley. Obviously, he produced everything from Brave New World on forward to where we stand today.
Yep.
And we already went off about, we feel it's time to make some changes here, but I don't think it's a great follow-up to Brave New World, but it is my second favorite Kevin Shirley album, if that says anything.
There you go.
So
Yep.
number 8, Dance of Death. Real quick, the songs that stand out for me on this one would be Rainmaker, No More Lies. The ending of the album is really solid, actually, believe it or not. This was one of those weird situations for me where, if you go back to the classic era of Maiden, it's like they always kicked it off with two, three, four songs right in a row in the beginning of the album to really get your attention and hook you. But this one, it actually ends with four good songs in a row. So I was
Right.
kind of surprised, Face in the Sand, Age of Innocence, The Journeyman. They just kept, I'm going, wow, this album is pretty good. You almost didn't want it to end the way it was
Yeah.
ending there because it was
Yeah.
just solid song after solid song. It just kind of loses a little bit to me in the middle there. That's all. But other than that, very solid album and my number 8.
Got it. Cool. All right. So my number 7 is where it all started with self-titled. Um, Obviously, this one started it all. I honestly thought the Diano albums may have trumped the rest of the catalog, but they did not. And always was a huge fan of Diano. I still am. And but these albums, yeah, they this one specifically, Iron Maiden, the first album, is a little bit flat when you're listening to it in the context of the rest of the catalog. Um Obviously still amazing songs, 37 minutes, respectable time length for Maiden. Of course it's on their first album where it's only 37 minutes, but yeah, 12 songs all at respectable times. Phantom of the Opera obviously is a little lengthy at 7 minutes, but a great song. Running Free, amazing. Wish I seen that song more live than I did. Seen it once or twice. And the title track, Iron Maiden, great song. Yeah, so the album's great. But obviously it has that more early punk attitude, which I love about the Diano era. But yeah, I thought this was going to go up, be a little higher than it was. But the great songs are great, and the two to four that are a little less than great sort of fall short for me. But yeah, first album's number seven for me.
And we got a winner. Ba-bing.
Oh, finally.
Number seven for me is also the debut Iron Maiden.
Wow, that's shocking.
So 1980, the first album reached number four in the UK, which is a solid debut for a
Sure,
UK release out of a band that just started there.
sure.
But obviously, the US took us a little while to catch on to this band, so it didn't chart here. It was produced by Will Malone, the only album that guy would go on to produce.
Yeah,
Um, Last album for Dennis Stratton, and it reached gold. You know, probably on the strength of the earlier catalog. You know, sometimes when bands, even though it didn't chart, you go back and release an album when you only got one or two albums out, it tends to help the back catalog sell. And that's what that exactly did here for sure.
sure.
Um, you know, with this album, you know, this it's the one that laid the ground for everything to come. You know, you got Prowler, Remember Tomorrow, the great classic Running Free, um, the great title track, which ends the album, Phantom of the Opera. You know, this is just a great debut. That really helped set the tone and put this band on the map, no doubt about it. It's a strong album, and that's why it's number seven for me. I know there's only six albums better than it, and you got number seven out of a 17 album catalog. You know, I think the ones that are just above it are just so good. You know,
Yeah, right.
it just took it. You know, it's where they fell. So, all right, what you got for number six?
All right. So for number six is going to be the first of my favorite three-digit numbers, 666, and that's yeah, that's the first album with Bruce. Number of the Beast is my number six. It's weird how it falls there. I didn't even think about it till right now. But yeah, amazing. I mean, to start the album off with Invaders, that's a those runs and stuff, different style of songs. So right off the bat, it sort of shows what the new Maiden is going to be now after Diano's gone. So love that Invaders is the one that starts this album off for being the first Bruce album because it sort of confuses you. It's got almost a video game soundtrack thing to it. And obviously with what it's about, it's goes well. So love that. The second song of the record being almost a ballad with Children of the Damned. Love that song. Not a big ballad fan, but Maiden does it correctly for the most part, especially on these earlier records. Um, the first song that ever hooked me with Maiden, because the first time I seen him was from the Live After Death VHS that I got from Blockbuster when I was like 7, 8 years old. Hallowed Be Thy Name is the first song that hooked me for metal in general, period. And sort of is what brings me to where I am today and the band I'm in and the style of music I love and listen to the most. It usually revolves around Maiden being the godfathers of it. So this album, I think, is the thing that just said this is what Iron Maiden is now. Here's the style. Expect this for the next few records, and it's just going to get bigger and better and bigger and better. And that's exactly what they did for many years. And this album, I feel, is what really started that off. If this album sucked, we may not have had the last seven Maiden records. If this album blew after Diano, they may have disappeared in the US. Um, so I know they hit the top 40 in the US off the bat with this record. So yeah, I Number of the Beast right there at number six for me, right at the top of the litter.
Oh, I thought it'd be a lot lower than that. I'm shocked.
Oh, really? No.
Oh yeah, yeah. All
Yeah,
right,
I'll
so my
stand
number
by
six
it.
is probably one that you haven't mentioned yet, so I'm going to mention it now because this is exactly where it belongs in my catalog. I always thought when this album came out, I never really was much of a fan of it. It never really, well, I would say we didn't have rock radio at the time in Buffalo, unfortunately, so we really only got to hear Canadian stations at this point in time, and that probably had a lot to do with why I couldn't really get into it so much at that point, only because I wasn't hearing it anywhere. and
Right.
MTV wasn't really playing their videos really. Usually at the late night, maybe on the metal, but not in the daytime when everybody else had their hits going. And we got to remember '88. You're talking the return of Aerosmith. You're talking White Snake still riding a high, Motley Crue, and everybody had albums out in that time frame. But Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, 1988.
Mm,
It's number six. Definitely not as strong as the five before it, but a good album nonetheless. Obviously, it beat the first Maiden album, so that says something in my book.
yeah.
Number one in the UK, number 12 in the US. I'm surprised it made platinum because it didn't really make the waves that you would expect a platinum album to make here, but it did do its job. It made platinum, which, was definitely a solid thing at that time. Basically, that's whenever a band got a platinum album back in those days, it's almost like guaranteed the next album, was going to come no matter what. The only downside with that, this is the last US album for Maiden to reach platinum.
Mm,
That's something that's a unique stat there. So
yeah.
Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, real quick, I'll take you through it, give you my favorite song off the album, which would be Don't Laugh, Can I Play with Madness? I know
Oh, I love that song.
yeah, well, the a lot of people kind of rag on that one because it was like it screamed hit. But I'll tell you, it's different when you hear that live version. What a difference.
Yeah.
The live version to the studio version.
Oh,
That
yeah.
live version is so powerful. It's a totally different song almost. And that, I
Yep.
don't know, it just made me
It's
you know, I,
faster. It's
yep,
faster. It's stronger. Yeah, I agree with that.
yep. So the other song, I'll give you two more that I feel that there's more, but I'll give you the two other next best songs to listen to as if you guys want to, if for people who never really heard this album or would like to play it and say, hey, what should I listen to off of it? I would go The Evil That Men Do, which was a solid song, and Infinite Dreams. Those are two of the best. I mean, there's a few more on there that I'm sure you'll recommend when you get to it, but for the
Yeah.
most part, those are to me are my three favorite songs off the album. It picks up where Somewhere in Time left off, and just a little bit weaker. That's all. But overall, definitely a solid album that made platinum, that did grow on the charts, and it's my number six.
Cool. Gotcha. All right. Number five for me is Killers, um, the last Diano record. And what's interesting is for me, and I didn't think this going into it, Killers and self-titled are pretty much interchangeable for me. I feel like self-titled could have been number five and Killers could have been number seven. However, I think the strongness on Killers is better. I think Another Life, Wrathchild, and Drifter are just so incredible that I gave that the win and put that at number five. Killer's a good album. I feel I like the production value a little better than I like the album that came before it, self-titled. And it's still great to listen to and is the last record to really have that punk that early punk kind of 80s punk vibe that Maiden had before Number of the Beast. So yeah, Killer's number five for me. What was it for you again? Yours was it was way up there, huh?
Yeah, for Killers for me was 13. It just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just felt that to me, for some reason, I just didn't like that one as strongly as the first one. That's all.
And again, like, and you know how it is with bands like this that we love, and when we're ranking their catalog, like, it really depends on the day, the month, the year, right? I mean, where something falls sometimes. I mean, we try to do it here where it is our official list,
Yep.
but with bands like this that we've been listening to for 20, 30 years, it can change a little bit. So looking at it right now while talking to you about it, especially after having the discussion, I feel like, self-titled might be a little above Killers, but when I was writing this and listening to
Hmm.
everything, this is where it fell. So for me, Killers is right there in the top five.
All right. So let's get further into it. Number five for me, the 1986 release, Somewhere in Time, reached number two in the UK, number 11 here. Another platinum album produced by Mr. Martin Birch. This is the first time I got to see Maiden live. So let me tell you, I was just simply blown away seeing Bruce Dickinson on that stage, just singing away. It's like I was in another dimension or something. That's the way I looked at it. I mean, I could still picture that exact moment when he came out and they opened up with Caught Somewhere in Time. And man, oh man, I could still picture him. He was on the upper part of the stage there. And man, what a memory. And that's been glued in my head ever since. Um, this album holds special meaning, which is probably why it's a little bit higher up there. But Caught Somewhere in Time, that's basically the title track, although it's got the extra word added in there. Kicks off the album in great style, and then it kicks right into Wasted Years. Heaven Can Wait, like you said, solid Stranger in a Strange Land. I mean, this album, kind of for me, it kind of peters out near the end a little bit. That's why it's just not quite as strong as the four I got before it, but it's definitely falls right into place here at number five.
Cool. All right. Well, number four for me is an album that Steve Harris produced. You already mentioned it, Fear of the Dark. Always thought that this thing was extremely underrated. Some amazing songs. You never really, I mean, you talked about it with Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. The live version of Fear of the Dark is the only one you hear. It's like Rock and Roll All Night. It's literally the only version of this song you hear anywhere is the live version of Fear of the Dark, even on greatest hits compilations and all that. So Fear of the Dark, I think, is I'm glad it's one of the three or four that they always play no matter what. Love that song. Screams Iron Maiden. Really paints a picture of if you don't like Fear of the Dark, and I feel this way about Hallowed Be Thy Name too, if you don't like those two songs, you don't like Iron Maiden. It really paints who they are. And Fear of the Dark, just the slow bellowing intro, getting into the crazy fast heavy stuff. Amazing. Love that song. I feel there's some other real bangers on this record that people don't talk about too much. Wasting Love is great. Chains of Misery, it's a great song. Be Quick or Be Dead, what a way to start a record off. And for being the last Dickinson album, I think it holds up so well, and really is sort of an end of an era for the band because they never really sounded like that again. Um, I think this is the last record to really be what Maiden became when Number of the Beast came out and Dickinson joined the band. From that until then, that's the biggest Maiden has ever been and will ever be, and the best they've ever been are the albums between Beast and Fear of the Dark. So Fear of the Dark for me is a great bookend album for an era of Iron Maiden, and definitely feel it deserves to be right there in the top four.
All right. Yep. Definitely agree with that statement where you said Fear of the Dark is a good bookend to that era. Definitely perfect way to end it there. All right. So your number four was that. Mine is actually, this one surprised me a little. Out of all the catalog here, I did not expect this album to be as high up as it was here. So this was it's a testament to how great this album really is and how much I appreciate it now more than I ever did. And that's none other than the reunion album 2000's Brave New World, which
Wow.
came in at number 7 on the UK charts and number 39 in the US. So it made them crack the top 40 once again, which was a welcome back Iron Maiden to the US, and they did a great tour with Halford opening, followed by Queensryche. You talk about those three great vocalists in one concert. What a great time that was, and I got to see that tour twice, so I was very happy to see it. Brave New World kicks off. What a way this album kicks off in fine style. You kick off with the fast pace of the Wicker Man. You go into Ghost of the Navigator, right into the title track. Now, I don't know why everybody likes Blood Brothers. This is probably the weakest song on the album for me. I
I
just, for
agree.
some
Yeah.
reason, I cannot get into this song, and my brother feels the same way, believe it or not, oddly enough.
No, you're not the only one. I mean, I have two friends that are diehard Maiden fans as well, and they say the same exact thing. Why is that
Yeah.
song the only song that gets talked about from this record?
And it's like it's the only one they ever play sometimes nowadays
Yeah,
still, which doesn't make sense to me when there's so much great stuff on here. Really
yeah.
love Dream of Mirrors. What a great song. Definitely one that kind of gets overlooked here. The Nomad, another one that stands out. The Fallen Angel. Just a solid album that, recalls the glory days although the sound is, a little different, like you said, how Fear of the Dark kind of closed that chapter. Brave New World helps set the tone for the new chapter, but the only problem is, to me, it just didn't really take off after Brave New World. There's
Right.
definitely out of the final 6 albums they released, Brave New World is definitely no doubt about the strongest, and no doubt about the it helps set the tone for the second, the current era that we're in with Maiden. It's
Right.
just sad that they haven't duplicated or replicated something close to Brave New World since. Um, but
Well, what's interesting is that new era has
yeah,
lasted 24 years.
yeah, yeah, you got a
I
point.
mean, that's what's interesting about that. And it is. I mean, that album, when you listen to that side, if you listen to that side by side with Number of the Beast opposed to side by side with like Final Frontier, Book of Souls, you can definitely put the pieces together and where it fits. So you're right. Brave New World absolutely was sort of the mold of what came after it.
All right, now we're going to dig into our top three. This is really going to be getting good because I don't know where yours is going to lie here.
Yeah, we'll see what you feel about it. All right, yeah. So let me start it off then. For number three for me, I thought this may have been number one, believe it or not, but after listening to my top three, this is what it is, and that is Peace of Mind. Um, love, love, love every song on this record for the most part. To Tame a Land, which ends it out. I have a lot of friends that love that song, but I never really got it. Um, Quest for Fire, amazing, but in the lower tier of songs for me. Now, where the album really shines are the first five songs off of the nine-song album. This is where those first five songs trump most of the catalog, and that's Where Eagles Dare, Revelations, Flight of Icarus, Die with Your Boots On, and The Trooper. Those songs are all classic Maiden to me, and by far the best five-song start to a heavy metal album ever in history, in my opinion. And that includes Kiss and Alice Cooper stuff. So those first five songs, just I thought those alone were gonna make it number one for me, but it didn't. But
Hmm.
absolutely love Peace of Mind. It features Die with Your Boots On, which is one of my all-time favorites. I got very lucky to see a lot of these songs live. From my first time, you mentioned your first time seeing Maiden and why that's probably why the album fell where it did for you. That's how I feel a lot with this because they only played songs off the first four albums, and to be able to hear songs like Revelations and Die with Your Boots On, which fans wouldn't be able to hear for a pretty long time after that, was very special to me, being front row against the barricade right in front of Bruce, and just mind-numbing how great that was. So that's why for me, Peace of Mind, the first five songs on that record, the best sequence of a metal album ever, in my opinion. That's why that sits right there at number three for me.
All right, my number three is going to be the 1984 version, Power Slave.
Yep.
Peaked at number two and reached as high as number 21 on the US charts, another platinum album, another one produced by Martin Birch. And wow, I don't think there's a 1-2 punch in the main catalog, though, that fits as good together as Aces High into 2 Minutes to Midnight. Those are the two songs that Live After Death. Just put that album on and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. What a 1-2 punch to kick off any concert. And that's what they usually do when they do play those two songs. It was weird when they separated them off the last time I believe I seen them. I don't think they played them together, which was one of the times I seen them. They didn't play them together, so it was weird. They didn't play one of the songs; they played the one. But you know, this is the song that really got a lot of critical acclaim for the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Uh, totally. What? How long is that song? It's just phenomenal.
13 minutes.
Yes. So at 13:45 it clocks in at, but
Yeah,
you can listen to this song without just all the way through. It keeps your attention span, and then
totally.
that's the way to close out the album, man. I'll tell you, they kept there's a little filler on here in like the Duelists and Back in the Village is kind of
Oh, see, we'll get to that, but yeah,
but
but go ahead.
but the song Power Slave is phenomenal, and I like Flash of the Blade. That's a solid song.
Yeah, great guitar riff there.
Yep, a lot of good guitar on the whole
Oh
album,
yeah,
man. But
yeah.
yeah, this album just fell a little bit short, only because the two above it are definitely a little bit more solid than this one. But this is definitely no slouch, believe me. As we can see with you, it sounds like it's still you haven't mentioned this one yet, so it's definitely on your list still to come. So
Yeah.
let's get into your number two here and see what you got for that one.
All right, so number two for me, Mirrors your number three, and that's going to be Power Slave.
Ah,
Yeah, I disagree with you in the fact that the two songs you considered filler, are my two favorite songs on the album. I think The Duelist and Back in the Village are just for some reason Back in the Village reminds me of like when I was a kid playing Sega Genesis and playing a fighting game. That's what I feel was playing in the background. Like that kind of it just that whole riff and where it takes you. Love that Back in the Village, easily in my top five or six Maiden songs. But yeah, and then obviously, you're talking about a hit like Aces High, and in my opinion, that song should never be played other than first, in
mm,
my opinion, right after Doctor Doctor being played over the radio. I think doing that later in the set, which is what they were doing on this current tour, is a little odd to me. But after seeing the Legacy of the Beast tour, yeah, 2019, I mean, opening with that with the plane and stuff, just incredible. And I got to see the song live before with you once or twice. So but still nothing like opening with that song. So even for an overplayed song, I mean, Aces High still, it there's nothing gets old about that song. So that's why that sits right there at number two. Everything else that needed to be said about the album, you already got to.
mm. All right. So what do I got for number two then? What do you think? So we're gonna go in the 1980s. Does that give it away at all?
No, I forget which ones you have in pit 30, but I'm going to
All right.
assume
So number two is
you're
one that
going
you
number. You're going number of the beast then.
nope, number two is going to be none other than the 1983 Peace of Mind, the first Iron Maiden album I ever bought.
There you go. Yeah.
Number three in the UK, number 14 in the US. Probably the hands down to me the best Iron Maiden album cover. Love that cover design there. And well, what can I say? I think you hit the nail on the head pretty much when you said about the way they sequenced this thing. But the only problem is you left off and you didn't say six good songs in a row, which I don't know how you can forget the Great Still Life, which to me is like the most underrated Iron Maiden song of all time. I just simply
Yeah,
love that song.
it never clicked with me, but my buddy Dave, who's also a diehard, that's like in his top five, and I never ever clicked
Yeah.
with me the way it does with you guys.
I think the songs after Still Life, yeah, like you said, To Tame a Land, I've never gotten into that one either. So I definitely agreed with you on your assessment of that one. Quest for Fire is okay. Sun and Steel's all right. Just not as strong as the first six, that's all. I mean,
Right,
what else
right.
can you do? So it was kind of good sticking those at the end because if they put those and mixed them in the middle between one and six, maybe the album doesn't feel as strong anymore, but the way they
Yeah, I agree.
sequenced it, they set it up for success, was what they did.
Yeah,
Where
totally.
Eagles Dare, Revelations. And I'm so happy I got to see Flight of Icarus live for the first time the last time they came to town. That was just
Yeah,
something I always wanted to see. I've seen Maiden many, many times, but they never played Flight of Icarus
yeah,
um, for me until then. You always see the Trooper. That's the song that you're always going to get pretty much at least once every two tours for sure.
yeah.
They
Right. I was
very
gonna say it's
rarely,
not every time, but it's
yeah,
95% of it. Yeah.
yep. But yeah, just to me, this is a solid album from head to toe. Um, take off Tame a Land, and it's even better. But
Yeah, yeah, totally.
definitely number two for me. I mean, nothing else to say about it other than put this record on and play it all the way till you get to Tame a Land, and you'll probably agree with our assessment of this album.
Yeah.
All right, number one.
All right. Now, what's interesting is my top three pretty much could have flip-flopped anywhere. I'd say, but, and I've always felt this way, and it's funny because yours is way low on your list. But Seventh Son is my number one. I think it's completely underrated as a full Maiden album from the fan base. Even like you said, "Can I Play with Madness?" Being, you thought I thought was gonna think that was weird how much you love that song, but no, I think it's one of the strongest in their catalog because it sounds different than 90% of
Mm.
the songs in their catalog. Um, and then The Evil That Men Do, even though that's one that's literally almost played every single tour, which is a weird choice, I feel, but by far one of my favorites as far as the melodicness, the guitar playing, the stops and goes, the dynamics of the song in general. My favorite song on the record is Only the Good Die Young, which you never hear anyone talk about, probably because the
Mm.
chorus is repeated 45 times. But I love that song. Always thought I big part of it is you never really hear it. So when it comes up on the end of the record, I'm like, damn, I forgot how good that song is. So yeah, I'd put Seventh Son right at the very top of my list at number one. Basically due to the fact that I feel every song sort of has something different to offer, which a lot of the Maiden albums don't. It doesn't have that vibe. Most of the Maiden albums are completely cohesive. I feel like with Seventh Son, every single song has something different to offer that sort of follows different parts of Maiden's catalog. So that's why I had to put that right at number one. Where did that fall for you?
Um, let me see.
Wasn't it like
It
eight
was
or
it was a
nine?
while. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was sixth.
Oh, okay. That's not too bad then.
Yeah, it was sixth. Classic era Maiden, so that's why it probably fell where it fell. But
Yeah, and that was another great tour with Cooper opening at Darien Lake, um, when they redid that era and we got to hear Moonchild live. Too bad no Infinite Dreams, but Infinite Dreams is another song that I feel is extremely underrated in the catalog. So yeah, sits right there at number one.
all right, let's go into my number one for me, and that's going to be none other than the only Iron Maiden album with no filler on it, in my estimation. That's going to be the 1982 release, The Number of the Beast. The first album with Bruce went platinum. Last album with drummer Clive Burr, once again produced by Martin Birch, reached number 33 in the US. And, it says it's only platinum, but wouldn't you think by now it's probably double or triple in reality? It would have to be. They probably just
Oh
didn't
yeah,
recertify it because everybody that likes Maiden has this album in some capacity. I mean, how
right.
can you not? No doubt the album that really put them on the map as far as, especially in the US here, um, reaching number 33, like I said. But it's for some reason, just they still have it listed as platinum, but I would assume that that's just one of those albums that definitely sold a lot more copies, especially with the remasters. Everybody ran out and bought the remasters, so they
Yeah.
bought it again. And, I don't know how that all works with that, but
I mean, I think it's been remastered at least
a couple
twice
times,
now,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
plus the vinyl re-releases and all that.
yeah,
So
yeah. It should be a lot higher up there, but kicks off with Invaders, which is a cool opening track, and then it goes right into Children of the Damned. Wow, what a great song! And then it goes into one of my another one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs, which never really gets too much attention, and that's "The Prisoner." What a great song! Then you got 22 Acacia Avenue, "The Number of the Beast" itself, "Run to the Hills." Obviously, those two songs have been played to death in concert and on the radio for years and years and years. But it still doesn't really lose anything for me as far as, I'm glad it kind of hides in the middle of the album, and then you go right into Gangland, and then you end with, whoa, what a classic, "Hallowed Be Thy Name." Just a solid album from start to finish. Not one piece of filler. You're not skipping that skip button on your CD player. You're just letting it play all the way through, and it's just, I actually thought it was going to be Peace of Mind or Power Slave as my number one. So when I went to go do it, I had to re-listen to those three albums probably two or three more times, and everything fell right where it was.
right, yeah.
So that's where I got it. Number of the Beast is my number one.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah. Well, our list we were sort of following each other through that entire list, but we only matched up on one.
Yeah, that's weird because I thought for sure we matched near the end there, but you had such different ones than from what I had.
Yeah.
We were
A
close.
couple were far apart. I mean, we had a couple that were six, seven off.
Yeah, I mean, we did we considering how big the catalog is, we did do a pretty. They were pretty much a lot closer than I thought they would be because I know, obviously me, I came alive and into the era where '83 was my first album I purchased. What would have been your first Maiden album that you purchased?
The first new record that came out or the first Maiden
Yeah,
album?
yeah. Like
I
what era?
said, well, The Matter of Life and Death was the first album I bought on release date.
Okay.
I had seen them the year previous. What got me into the band was the Alexander the Great Greatest
Ah,
Hits album, and then I immediately bought Brave New World. So I actually heard the Greatest Hits album first and then Brave New World. So any of the non-hit songs or non-greatest hit songs all came after Brave New World and the Greatest Hits album for me. So I started diving deep directly after that. And
uh-huh.
then yeah, the first album I bought with my own money was a year after me seeing them for the first time, and that was A Matter of Life and Death that I got the day of release.
All right. Well, that was interesting. Definitely well worth the wait. I hope for people who are true Maiden fans and got it. Hopefully, get something out of this. Hopefully we turned them on to some new albums that maybe they never had, or maybe some songs that we mentioned. Maybe hopefully that that give them a chance to get another good listen to it, and maybe see it from a different perspective. Now that we've sat here and ranked them and talked about these albums.
Right. And maybe, you let us know your list in the comments, whether you're listening to some of these albums for the first time or you're a diehard that are
mm,
listening to them again and try to get a number for them. This one was even more interesting to do than Kiss because there was a bunch of songs that I haven't listened to in a very long time that was really nice to hear again, and sort of put into perspective with the whole catalog. So this one was a lot of fun to do because it's such a long catalog. It's 17 albums. That's a lot of records.
no doubt about that. All right.
Once,
Well, it was
once
good.
I can talk you into doing it to listening to all the Alice Cooper albums, then
Uh,
we can do an even longer catalog. But
well, we'll get to there some year, but yeah, that one's a really extensive catalog. It's almost double, almost definitely
yeah.
crazy with these amount of albums that he makes there. But
Yeah, and that's another one that would can change. If I gave you my list right now, after if I spent 10 hours writing an Alice Cooper list right now, tomorrow would be a totally different list for me. So it really depends on mood and stuff because it's so
yep.
all over the place. At least Maiden's more, you know what you're getting. And like I said, me and you basically sort of went by era here as far as, because there's three different eras of Iron Maiden. So it was sort of
And
fun.
four if you
That.
count like the main Bruce era, the classic Bruce era, as opposed to the latter
Oh,
Bruce era.
that's true.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
because
like four distinct eras. And I think that's what makes this catalog kind of unique. It's really a unique catalog, I mean, obviously some bands like Aerosmith, you're going to have every album pretty much the same. The only downside was the difference would be when Crespo and Dufay played on Rockin' a Hard Place.
right.
But other than that, you got the same band, the same members on all the whole album, so there really isn't much of a break there. And with this, pretty much the same band. They made a few member changes throughout their history, but nothing. You had you had three different singers, couple different drummers,
Yeah.
but for the most part, what a catalog by these guys. No matter who was at the band at the time, these guys. This is just one of these great catalogs that I just really truly appreciate, and I wish there's not too many bands out there these days that are ever going to have catalogs like these ever again.
No, that's correct.
You're not going to see it with the way record labels drop bands nowadays, and it's expensive to make an album. So many bands have veered away from making full albums nowadays. It's a shame because it's an art, and these guys perfected it, man, no doubt about it. Great album covers, um, just great songs. Some better than others. But overall, a very solid catalog by a band that's been around for a long time. All right, very good. All right, well, till next time, this is the end of this one. And like you said, go ahead and comment, leave your rankings in the comments there. Let us know.
Yes, please.
what you think, because this is the whole thing. I like to see what other people think, just to see, was my list justified? I mean, obviously, my list is my list. Not too many
Right.
people are going to change my mind, but
Right.
it's good to hear somebody mentioning an album maybe that I didn't really talk too much about for whatever reason. And maybe it'll let me go, okay, well, this guy's raving about this album. Let me give it another listen and see what he says, and we'll go from
Right.
there. But that's what it's all about. It's mostly to turn people on to songs and, see what albums you really feel are your favorite and all that good stuff. It's just a good conversation starter. So sounds good, buddy. We'll see you on the next episode down the road, and take care.
Awesome. See you guys later.